What's up, everyone? You're not going to believe what just happened. We need to talk about this press conference that's absolutely blowing up the internet right now. Dillion Gabriel just said something that has the entire football world going crazy, and when I tell you what went down when they asked him about Shedeur Sanders, your jaw is going to drop. This is insane, and we're jumping right into it. Alright, so here's what's going on. The team just took another devastating loss, and things are getting real tense. We're looking at a 2-7 record here, 2 wins, 7 losses. That's the kind of season that has everyone on edge. Coaches are stressed, fans are furious, and quarterbacks are feeling the heat. Dillion Gabriel is in the spotlight right now because after what we just saw on that field, people are asking some serious questions, the kind that make press conferences super uncomfortable. Let me break down what happened in this game because it was absolutely brutal. Dillion Gabriel went out there and put up some pretty rough numbers. He threw for only 167 yards and got 2 touchdowns on 17 completions out of 32 attempts. Now, some people might want to blame the defense, and sure, they had their issues. But here's the reality. You can't pin this entire mess on the defense. Dillion Gabriel has to own this loss. When you look at the overall team stats, it gets even worse. The offense only managed 278 total yards. But here's the really embarrassing part. The Jets beat them with just 169 total yards. Let me say that again. 169 total yards. They had 42 passing yards and 127 rushing yards. That's all they needed to win. When your opponent beats you with numbers that pathetic, that tells you everything about how badly your offense performed. Now here's where this whole thing becomes the viral sensation everyone's talking about. After this terrible performance, Dillion Gabriel had to sit down and face the media. And you know what happens at press conferences after horrible losses, especially when you're sitting at 2-7. The reporters start asking those uncomfortable questions, the questions about whether someone else should be taking your spot. And that someone else has a very specific name, Shedeur Sanders. If you don't know who Shedeur Sanders is, let me fill you in. We're talking about the son of NFL legend and current coaching sensation Deion Sanders. We're talking about a quarterback who's been making serious waves, turning heads, and generating massive buzz. Shedeur Sanders isn't just any backup quarterback. He's the backup quarterback, the one with the famous last name, the skills, the hype, and the legacy behind him. So when your team is losing badly, his name starts getting mentioned everywhere. In locker rooms, on sports radio, in comment sections all over the internet. The press conference started off pretty normal. Reporters were asking about play calling, about the offensive coordinator changes, about execution. Dillion Gabriel was handling those questions professionally. He talked about the flow of the offense under the new play caller, Tommy. He mentioned how things felt good going into the game, how there were moments of good execution, and how they stood by their game plan. Pretty standard stuff. Nothing controversial yet, nothing that would go viral. Just a quarterback trying to stay positive after a tough loss. Then they asked him about Kevin, presumably the head coach, sticking with him going forward, and this is where you could feel the tension starting to build. The reporter even acknowledged that at 2-7, sometimes things change. Sometimes coaches make moves. Sometimes quarterbacks get benched. But Kevin was sticking with Dillion. The reporter wanted to know how he felt about getting the opportunity to build on what he did and move forward. Dillion gave a thoughtful response. He talked about how, when things aren't going well, change is always part of the conversation because doing the same thing over and over expecting different results doesn't work. He took ownership, saying that in certain moments they didn't execute, and that starts with him. He talked about frustration, about putting in work and time, about needing to execute in crucial moments. But you could feel where this was heading. Every reporter in that room knew it. Every person watching knew it. And then finally, someone asked it. The question everyone wanted to hear. The question that would spark a million debates and create the viral moment we're all talking about right now. A reporter asked Dillion Gabriel straight up if he ever finds himself looking over his shoulder and wondering when they're going to turn this thing over to Shedeur. Does that ever cross his mind? Does he worry about when Shedeur Sanders is going to take his job? In that moment, the entire football world held its breath. This was it. How was Dillion going to respond? Was he going to get defensive? Was he going to show frustration? Was he going to take a shot at Shedeur? The possibilities were endless and everyone was waiting. And here's what Dillion Gabriel said. No, all I can do is control what I can control. And yeah, that's what you gotta do, that's all you got. Now, on the surface, that might seem like a simple, straightforward answer. Nothing flashy, nothing controversial, just a guy saying he's focused on what he can control. But let me tell you why this response went absolutely viral and why everyone is dissecting every single word. First, the brevity. This is a guy who throughout the entire press conference gave detailed, thoughtful answers to every question. He talked about play design, protection schemes, route concepts, momentum, and rhythm. But when asked about Shedeur Sanders potentially taking his job, he gave the shortest answer of the entire press conference. That's it. That tells you everything about how he really feels about this question. Second, the tone. If you watch the video, and millions of people have watched it, you can see it in his face. You can hear it in his voice. There's this weariness there, this exhaustion that goes beyond just losing a football game. This is a man who is tired of the questions, tired of the speculation, tired of having his job security questioned after every bad performance. And at 2-7, with performances like what we just saw, those questions aren't going away. Third, and this is the big one, there's what he didn't say. He didn't say Shedeur isn't ready. He didn't say he's the best option for this team. He didn't say the coaches believe in him. He didn't say they're going to turn this around. He just said he controls what he can control. That's basically a non-answer. It's the kind of response you give when you know the writing might be on the wall, but you're trying to stay professional. The internet immediately exploded. Social media went absolutely crazy. Fans started picking apart every aspect of his response. Some people are defending Dillion, saying he handled it with class and maturity. They're praising him for not taking the bait, for staying focused, for being professional. These fans argue that what else is he supposed to say? Of course he's not going to admit to looking over his shoulder. That's basic PR. But then there's the other camp, and they're very loud. These are the fans and analysts who see this response as basically admitting defeat. They're saying Dillion knows his days are numbered. They're interpreting his short response as a guy who doesn't want to talk about Shedeur because he knows Shedeur is breathing down his neck. They're pointing to his body language, to the way he seemed to shut down when that question came up. And here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Shedeur Sanders. This isn't just any backup quarterback controversy. If this was some undrafted free agent or a late-round pick, it would be different. But we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, the son of Coach Prime, a guy who has a massive following, who has proven himself at the collegiate level, who has the kind of talent that turns heads. When you add in the family legacy, the media attention, and the star power, this isn't just a football decision. This is a huge event waiting to happen. The question becomes, what happens next? At 2-7, this team is going nowhere. They're not making the playoffs. They're not salvaging this season. At some point, don't you have to start thinking about the future? Don't you have to start giving your young talent some reps, some experience, some game action to see what you really have? And if that young talent happens to be one of the most talked about prospects in recent memory, doesn't that make the decision even easier? Let's go back to the game itself for a moment because Dillion's performance really does matter here. This wasn't just a bad game, this was catastrophically bad. Getting sacked 6 times is unacceptable. Dillion tried to explain it in the press conference. He said he doesn't want to take those sacks, that he wants to find a safe place to throw the ball. But in those moments, he couldn't avoid them. 6 sacks. That's not just on the offensive line, that's on the quarterback too. That's on holding the ball too long, not recognizing pressure, not getting rid of it fast enough. When a reporter asked what he could have done differently to avoid some of those sacks, his answer was basically that he should have thrown it away sooner. Well, yeah, that's quarterback basics. You have to have that awareness. You can't take 6 sacks in a game where your team only manages 278 total yards. But let's give credit where it's due. Dillion did have some bright spots. He connected with Jerry for a touchdown on a play where he rolled right, stopped, and threw it back. That's a high-level play that requires vision, arm strength, and touch. He also led a 95-yard touchdown drive that showed efficiency and execution. Those are the moments that keep him in the starting role. Those are the flashes that make coaches believe he can turn it around. The problem is, flashes aren't enough. Not at 2-7. Not when you're getting dominated by a team that only manages 169 total yards. Not when your offense looks completely lost. Not when penalties and false starts are killing drives. Not when you can't sustain momentum. Dillion himself admitted in the press conference that they're not playing winning football. He said they're beating themselves. He said they need to execute in key moments and they're not doing it. That's self-awareness, and that's good. But self-awareness without results is just accepting failure. Here's what makes this situation so fascinating. The coaching staff just made a change at offensive coordinator. Tommy just took over play calling duties. They're trying to establish a new system, create new rhythms, build new chemistry. Dillion talked about how the communication was good, how it felt like practice, how there was comfort, but then he also acknowledged something crucial. He said that when you make changes, you're trying to create continuity. You don't want to plant a seed and rip it up before it can grow. You need time to see the benefits. That's a really important point, and it's the argument for keeping Dillion as the starter. If you just installed a new offensive system with a new play caller, don't you need to give it time to develop? If you make a quarterback change on top of a coordinator change, aren't you just creating more chaos? That's the rational, patient approach. But here's the counter argument, and it's strong. At 2-7, do you really have time to be patient? Do you really have the luxury of letting things develop slowly? Or do you need to shake things up, inject some energy into a dying season? Bringing in Shedeur Sanders would do exactly that. It would create buzz. It would give fans a reason to tune in. It would give the team a psychological reset. And let's be honest about what everyone's thinking, but nobody wants to say out loud. Shedeur Sanders brings more than just football skills. He brings a name. He brings a brand. He brings marketing potential and social media engagement. In the modern NFL, those things matter. They shouldn't be the primary reason for making a personnel decision, but they're factors. When you're losing and attendance is down and fans are tuning out, having a Sanders under center changes the conversation. Throughout the press conference, you could see Dillion trying to stay positive while also being realistic. He kept talking about execution in crucial moments. That phrase came up over and over. It's the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between a franchise quarterback and a journeyman. It's the difference between keeping your job and looking over your shoulder at Shedeur Sanders. And right now, Dillion Gabriel is not executing in crucial moments. The stats prove it. The record proves it. When asked about whether he saw this as hitting the reset button on the offense with Tommy's new approach, Dillion gave a measured response. He said that's the hard part with change. You're trying to create continuity, but you need to see it long enough to get the benefits. He said they're building, but at the end of the day, they need to find a way to win. It's a diplomatic answer, it's professional, but it also acknowledges they're nowhere near where they need to be. The reporters tried to get him to talk about the positives. They asked about getting Jerry more involved. They asked about efficient drives and momentum, and Dillion engaged with those questions. He talked about wanting to get the ball to the best players. He talked about wanting to be versatile, but every positive comment was undercut by the reality of the scoreboard. They lost again. One of the most telling moments came when a reporter asked if there were moral victories in the performance. The reporter mentioned that the offensive coordinator thought things were more efficient, thought they were moving in the right direction, and Dillion's response was perfect. He said no moral victories. That's the right answer. That's the mentality you want. Moral victories are for losers. Nobody celebrates almost winning. You play to win, and they didn't win. But then he kind of contradicted himself by acknowledging that yes, there was direction. Yes, Tommy's communication was good. Yes, there were efficient drives. So which is it? Are there positives to build on, or are there no moral victories? The truth is, probably somewhere in the middle. There were some things that worked, but not nearly enough. And that's been the story of Dillion Gabriel's season. Close, but not close enough. Moments of brilliance surrounded by stretches of mediocrity. The Shedeur Sanders question at the end of the press conference felt like the inevitable conclusion to everything. Every question, every answer, every stat, every excuse led to that one moment. Are you looking over your shoulder? And Dillion's response, short and simple as it was, spoke volumes. No, he's not looking over his shoulder. He's controlling what he can control. But here's the reality check. Whether Dillion Gabriel is looking over his shoulder or not, everyone else is. The coaches are thinking about it. The front office is thinking about it. The fans are definitely thinking about it. The media is obsessed with it. And Shedeur Sanders himself is probably thinking about it. When you're 2-7 and your quarterback is struggling, these conversations happen. What makes this situation so compelling is the human element. This isn't just about stats. This is about a man fighting for his professional life. Dillion Gabriel has worked his entire life to be a starting quarterback. He's put in countless hours. He's sacrificed everything. And now, after a few bad games, after a losing season, people are calling for him to be replaced. That's the brutal reality of professional sports. At the same time, this is about opportunity for Shedeur Sanders. This could be his moment. This could be his chance to prove he's not just a name, not just a legacy, but a legitimate starting quarterback. Every backup dreams of getting their shot. And when you're backing up a guy who's 2-7 with performances like we just witnessed, that shot might be coming soon. The viral nature of this press conference moment reveals something important about modern sports media and fan culture. We're obsessed with controversy. We're obsessed with drama. A quarterback giving a simple professional answer to a tough question becomes headline news because we want there to be more to it. We want the tension. We want the conflict. And to be fair, the story is real. Dillion Gabriel's job security is legitimately in question. Shedeur Sanders is legitimately a threat. This isn't manufactured drama. This is real stakes with real consequences. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely critical for Dillion Gabriel. He needs to perform. He needs to execute in those crucial moments he keeps talking about. He needs to cut down on the sacks. He needs to lead efficient drives. He needs to win games because at 2-7, the leash is short. The patience is thin. The calls for Shedeur Sanders are only going to get louder with every loss. For Shedeur Sanders, this is a waiting game. He's preparing, he's practicing, he's staying ready because in the NFL, opportunity doesn't wait. And if Dillion Gabriel keeps playing like he did in this last game, that opportunity is going to come very soon. The coaching staff is in a tough position too. They just hired a new offensive coordinator. They're trying to establish a system. They're trying to build continuity, but they're also trying to win games and save their jobs. Coaches get fired for 2-7 seasons. At some point, if things don't improve, they have to make the hard call. They have to make the quarterback change regardless of timing or circumstances. What's interesting is that Dillion Gabriel understands all of this. You can see it in the press conference. He's not naive. He knows the situation. He knows that at 2-7, everything is on the table. He knows Shedeur Sanders is there, ready to go. But what else can he do except control what he can control? He can't force the coaches to keep him in. He can't force the team to win. All he can do is prepare, practice, and play the best football he's capable of playing. And right now, his best isn't good enough. The football world is watching this situation unfold with intense interest. Sports talk shows are debating it. Podcasters are analyzing it. Twitter is exploding with opinions. This is the kind of storyline that captivates fans because it's relatable. We've all been in situations where we felt like we were fighting for our position, whether in sports, at work, or in life. We've all had someone ready to take our spot. We understand the pressure. We understand the anxiety. The question of whether Dillion Gabriel can turn this around is the central drama here. Does he have it in him to elevate his play? Can he be the quarterback this team needs? Or is this just who he is? A guy with some nice throws and good moments, but not the consistency or clutch gene required to be a winning quarterback. The next few games will answer those questions. And if the answer is no, if Dillion Gabriel continues to struggle and the losses continue to pile up, then the Shedeur Sanders era will begin. And when it does, it will be one of the biggest storylines in football. The son of Coach Prime taking over a struggling team. The expectations, the pressure, the hype. It would be must-watch television. It would be viral content gold. It would be the kind of moment that defines careers. But we're not there yet. Right now, Dillion Gabriel is still the starter. Right now, he still has the job. Right now, he still has the opportunity to prove everyone wrong. His response to the Shedeur question, as short and simple as it was, revealed a man who's trying to stay focused amidst chaos. A man who's trying to block out the noise. A man who's trying to control what he can control. This press conference moment went viral because it crystallized everything about this situation into one brief exchange. The pressure, the uncertainty, the threat of replacement, the struggle to stay professional under intense scrutiny. Dillion Gabriel's simple response became a mirror for his entire season. Short, uncertain, lacking the confidence and fire you want to see from your starting quarterback. Whether that's enough to keep his job remains to be seen, but one thing's for sure. Everyone's going to be watching what happens next, and this story is far from over. The pressure is on, the clock is ticking, and the football world is waiting to see if Dillion Gabriel can rise to the challenge or if the Shedeur Sanders era is about to begin.